Yes, thank you. Good evening. Have a seat. I didn't have a lot of authority here. Ding ding. Have a seat, we're starting. Welcome to the backyard of GRID-Arendal in Arendal. It's a fireside chat, and there are several different fires in the world today, right? We'll talk about some of them. My name is Karen Landmark. I'm the managing director of GRID-Arendal. We are an environmental foundation. We are also a center that supports United Nations Environment Programme in its efforts. So we deal with all of these issues through the system that we are part of. And today, hopefully, we'll challenge our system and a lot of systems a little bit. Much of the work we do is concerned with making complex environmental information available and understandable. But we see clearer and clearer, I would say, that access to information does not necessarily lead to any change. And we will talk about how this is in particularly relevant for Norway in the context of the stories we tell and the identities we hold and the institutions that we trust shapes what we as people consider possible and what we are willing and able to question. We can become a little bit blind from our own perspective, I would guess. Norwegians, and I find that challenging because I know you are going to challenge that, but I see myself as Norwegian, as kind of like a nature-loving, environmentally friendly, good person, right? And I think Norway is kind of like have that feeling of us as a country. We have values that we think are universal, right? Solidarity, equality, like common responsibility. I know in your podcast that we'll talk about, you talk about dugnad, which is like a typical Norwegian word. It's like showing up for your community, basically. So we're all that, but we're much more. Because in parallel to that, oil and gas are really woven into our society. And maybe in ways that we don't fully see, and in ways that can be a little bit painful for us to see. I think this is what we will explore, this and more, together with, well, from an outsider, two outsiders' perspective. You look into Norway, but from Norway. So you have lived here for a while, both of you, and you have gotten to know us. I'm very pleased to welcome Callan McIntyre and Dickon Bondevik Stone. Give them an applause. And maybe I don't have to say that, but you guys don't hold back on us tonight, okay? So we're here to be, yes, we're here to be challenged. And I also want that we have time in the end for the audience also to keep challenging us and each other. Callum, a climate campaigner, environmental advocate, and a snowboarder, in that order?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes. Working in the intersection of climate action, culture, and outdoor sports. And you're one of the initiators of Ski Fossil Free, a campaign seeking to end fossil fuel sponsorship of Olympic events and big world championships, right? I don't think necessarily we all reflect on that that's happening. Okay, can you anything you want to add? I'm sure there's so much more to you, Callum. So please let the audience get to know you a little bit. What drives you? What did I forget to mention?
I guess the main thing that I work with is in Norway is the campaign Folk mot fossilmakta, which was basically, it's very nice in Norway. You have a word which literally means the entrenched power of the fossil industry, which is very useful for us to describe what we think is the problem. So in 2024, I was part of a small group that set up this organization called Folk mot Fossilmakta. And I moved here to study climate change management. And I've been coming to Norway since I was a kid, since I was like 2 years old. My parents took me to Norway every year. And I really have had the feeling that Norway is a country full of people that love nature. And I actually came to study here because I thought that Norway was a leader on climate policy. Because I saw, all the renewable energy and the electric cars and all of the nice things. But after I moved here, after a year or two, then I started to understand that I thought I was going to just live here for 2 years and then go home and kind of take everything I learned back to Scotland. But I understood that maybe I had to stay here for longer. Okay. So yeah, I'm very driven by to challenge these this contradiction and this paradox in Norway.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to say thank you for doing that. Or I'm curious about hearing more. Thank you, Callum. Dickon, Climate and Strategic Communication Specialist, the host of the Communicating Climate Change podcast. So with your perspective, we'll dwell quite a lot about communication from both of you. Lately, you have created a fantastic podcast series together with an organization called Klimakultur that's called The Black Thread.
Yes.
And the black thread is, of course, then oil running through our veins and society and systems. I highly recommend it. I listened to it twice, and I'm a mix of sad, ashamed, and provoked.
And hopeful.
And hopeful, yes.
A whole episode about that.
Can you also tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Dickon. I'm also a Brit. My background is in marketing and communications, but I also have advanced studies in social change and sustainability. So then I bring this together in my work, in climate communications specifically. But my interest in climate change is not kind of from a climate management perspective. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a physicist. I deal with the human dimension, right? The social piece. So I'm interested in what people believe, what they value, how they see themselves, and then as a result, how they conduct themselves, what they do, and what they do or do not support, maybe when it comes to policy or change or governments. Because I find that stuff incredibly fascinating, how people work. And that's what led me to make this podcast.
Great, and thank you for bringing that perspective to the stage here, but also to us all, because I think we share that that's extremely important. Okay, so let's talk. It's not great in Britain either these days. But, we can.
It was a trap.
I want to start by thinking and speaking a little bit about this relationship we have to oil. Just before entering stage, I met Max, and he is talking to us about Norway's relationship to Antarctic krill. There are several paradoxes for us Norwegians. We have deep sea mining, we have other things, but we'll focus on the oil. There is a lot of things to say. It's this kind of feeling of being in between, wanting to be like a world climate leader and being seen as a climate leader, while we are Europe's biggest exporter of oil and gas, which is a fact, right? This is a contradiction, and it should kind of hurt a little bit, but I think we live quite well with it. How come?
I mean, I guess
what's happened there? Have we gotten used to? Callum, do you want to start?
I mean, I guess I can start off. I think for me it's very interesting to live in Norway because I come from Scotland, and Scotland is also an oil-producing country. We don't have an oil fund, unfortunately. That was a big mistake not to set that up. But I think the thing that I really noticed when I came to Norway first time to study and became part of society, I began to get quite surprised that like in other countries we think of oil companies like Equinor, we call them big oil, and it's like a negative thing. And when I came here, all of my friends thought that Equinor was a positive company. It was a nice company that was doing good work. And that was like a completely different relationship to an oil company that I had compared to like BP or Shell. And I think the thing that I just really noticed was that growing up in school in Scotland, I didn't go to Lego competitions that were sponsored by Equinor. I didn't go to a science center that had the Equinor logo on it. I didn't see every single one of my sporting heroes wearing the logo of an oil company. I didn't have murals in my school that were celebrating the oil industry. It's a totally different relationship that you have to an industry when you have this decades-long strategic communications campaigns that, for example, companies like Equinor have been doing in Norway. And so for me, it's like, I don't like to think that Norwegians think that this is like a personal responsibility that they have, or like that I'm criticizing them as people, because for me, it is a strategic communications campaign. It's not the fault necessarily of my friends who grew up thinking that Equinor was really positive because they gave money to their ski club and sponsored Johannes Klæbu and
Yes.
whatever.
Good. Dickon, does this resonate? Is this also your kind of... Are we just getting used to this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question that made me make this podcast, The Black Thread, and that process involved asking a variety of people, experts across Norway, from campaigners to political advisors to researchers to journalists to even people working at Equinor, right? To try and understand that. And each one of them brought a completely different perspective on why we are comfortable with this. You ask the political researcher and they say, well, it's because we actually arrange climate policy over in this bucket and oil policy over in this bucket, and so they never meet, and that has implications in both how we govern, but also further down the line. Maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
But then if you ask, say, the industry insiders, right? Like I spoke to the VP for communications at Equinor, Jannik Lindbach, and he explained all of the fantastic decisions that were made in the early days of oil that also build this kind of narrative as oil is good and positive. But then you speak to lots of other people and you get lots of other different perspectives, mainly also adding on what Callum's been talking about, this kind of Petroganda perspective where...
Good word. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Because that's...
Yeah, so the root of Petroganda is propaganda, obviously, an ideological message, usually from a government in that case, but in this case, Petroganda refers to ideological messaging designed to manipulate coming from oil companies.
That's great.
And that's how people these days talk about some of the communication in Norway. But yeah, targeting schools, targeting science museums, targeting sports, like that contributes to the normalizing of it, to our comfort with it being around us. Similarly to Callum, like coming from outside and seeing some of these things, when I first saw it, Equinor logos on children, for example, I would equate that with seeing tobacco advertising on children. And we would think that that was outrageous because there's such a conflict of interest between, well, these children will be affected by this product, why are they advertising it? In any other situation like that, we would call it out, but here it doesn't seem to happen. And it's many layers to the onion.
Yes, but then you can dig a little bit into that. So is it your understanding, or is Equinor, do they know what they do? Are they just this nice, they have this nice side to society? Or is this part of creating value for the shareholders, basically? What do they buy?
That one.
That one.
Yeah, when I spoke to the VP for communications, he was quite clear about it, actually. He said that the company is listed on the Oslo Stock Exchange. It has to compete, and with competing comes positioning, branding, marketing, and brand awareness is a very large part of that. And he was confident and proud that Equinor had, in his estimation, a 100% brand awareness in Norway.
It was a leading question for me because I've heard your podcasts, and that was an answer that really surprised me, because he was so clear about what their plan really was.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We've talked about this before, Callum, also, that where we come from, this stuff happens behind closed doors.
Yes.
Here, they're telling you they're doing it.
Yeah. Which is, it's an open democracy, I guess. That's the company side, and somehow it makes sense, right, for a stock exchange company to want to have brand awareness, if we can be neutral about that, and they're quite honest on that. I was surprised when I listened to your podcast that, for me, the brand has for many years been kind of neutral, because I have become so used to seeing it that, I mean, not even I, but I'm basically working with climate and environmental issues, and I have stopped reacting to it. Even my kids have had Equinor on their football shirts, right? So thank you for that. I would like to, Callum, talk a little bit about the other side of the communication, the media side. I want you to take us a little bit into your campaigns, because working with, in particular, Norwegian skiers and snowboarders, did you see any, are we willing to speak up? Are there any awareness amongst the people that you work with? Take us through a little bit your Winter Olympics campaign, etc. And then slowly go into like the media's responsibility here. How is that affecting us?
Yeah, I mean, I can take you back to 2025, because I think this was, I thought, a very interesting example from when the Ski World Championships were in Trondheim in 2025. We did a campaign there where we announced that we were going to sit on the track during the final of the 50K, which apparently is quite a big deal in Norway.
Yes.
So people didn't like it. But it was quite interesting, because as we got nearer and nearer to the race, a number of international skiers got in contact with us and were willing to kind of enter. But the organizers of the World Championships refused to. We asked if they could remove the Equinor logos from the race, and also have a video shown on the big screen about the need for a global fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, which we thought were fairly reasonable demands. The organizer said, not interested in them. But these international skiers started to talk to us. And basically, in the end, we didn't disrupt the race, because over 50 international, very well-known skiers basically came out with a statement saying, we agree with these people. We think fossil fuel companies should not sponsor a sport that is literally, dying because of their product, because burning their product. But in the end, there was no Norwegians on that list, and even like the national team, the Johannes Kleibe and those guys were asked, the national men's team were asked a question at the press conference during the World Championships about it, and they just couldn't answer. They were, and of course, because if you have grown up since you were 5 years old wearing this logo, it is very strange to suddenly not associate something positive to this Equinor logo. And we noticed it even more during especially with the media during the Winter Olympics now, where we did this campaign to the International Olympic Committee, asking for them to basically write a report justifying if they can still take money from fossil fuel companies, seeing as their sport is heavily impacted by climate change. And it was a Norwegian skier, Nikolai Schirmer, who initiated the campaign and fronted it in the media and things. And we had the Associated Press, the mainstream media in Germany, BBC asked a question at the press conference, first press conference of the Games, to the leader of the Olympic Committee about it. Media from all over the world that were interested, and not a single Norwegian media house was interested. VG, in the end, wrote something with Nikolai after a few weeks, but there was no interest from Norwegian media. Nothing. I was like, it's so shocked. I didn't realize that the problem was this bad.
Are we brainwashed, or are we just ignorant, or are we, what's happening?
I mean, I think it goes back to what Dickon was saying. In Norway, climate and oil are completely separate things.
Which it is politically.
Yeah, but this is really, really crazy. I think. You know, as soon as we're talking about the climate, we should be also talking about fossil fuels. But in Norwegian media, there's so many articles I read about the climate where fossil fuels are never mentioned, let alone the Norwegian fossil fuel industry.
It's like the scene from Fawlty Towers. Don't mention the war. If they mentioned it once, I think I got away with it. It's that.
But that divide is also part of the consequence of the way that the policy has been split, right? It meant that you had one person on the oil desk and you had one person on the climate desk. So these things lived separate lives, and it meant, and still means, that what is considered climate-related, climate action, is driving an EV, getting a water heater in your house, these kinds of things. Whereas then oil is just about how much did we sell. They never come together because of how it's been organized.
And I think that's such an important point to make, and for us as an international organization as well. It's Norway at home and Norway out there. And even on the emission side, we divide. So we talk about the emissions we have here, which is not so bad. But then we forget to take into account the oil and gas that is burned on our watch, right?
10 times national
10
emissions.
times national emissions, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Norway likes to talk about its outsized impact when that impact is good.
Yeah.
International diplomacy, peacemaking,
Yeah.
etc. But when it's a negative outsized impact, then we don't talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll continue to be a little bit on the hard. We will end with some hopeful inputs. But before that, I think we need to talk about this summer, right? I think it's like this "Don't Look Up" moment, the film. A little bit. It's getting harder, like even for the ones that are really resilient to facts, to kind of avoid seeing what's happening around us. The world is literally burning, and the media has a responsibility to describe that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Dickon, I think. Do you see anything in particular? What has happened here this summer? I know some examples from my local area, but please reflect a little bit on that.
Yeah, we had some really fascinating, meme-worthy moments, I think, from the headlines in Norwegian news. And maybe it comes back again to this siloed oil versus climate thing, where you end up with a front page or a news feed with landmark fires in France and Spain, hundreds of thousands of people evacuated from their homes, literally next to announcement of Equinor's quarterly results.
Yeah, which was positive.
Yes. And you know, it takes a lot of cognitive dissonance to live in that tension. And just as you said at the beginning, we know from science on how people react to climate that more data does not equal more action, you know. So something else is happening here, and it goes back to how oil has, through the many avenues and levers, woven into Norwegian identity, what's normal in society, how we, even you, as you just said, have become, you know, blind to what's there. It's the result, also, as Callum said, of, you know, at this point, over 50 years of telling these stories, weaving them in, multiple generations. Of course, this is something that comes up in the podcast too. Julia Fortschammer from Klimakultur explains that, you know, so many children are being exposed to this, but people don't really think that it's a problem because they also were exposed to it.
Yes.
And so we're now so far down in this loop that it's become self-reinforcing. And that's what brings us to a summer like this one, where the contrast is so stark and in your face, but we almost can't face it.
Yeah, no, it's painful, right? I've paid a little bit attention to the media situation in the UK as well, because I read The Guardian every day. So I think everybody in Britain is talking about climate change, but it turned out also there that kind of the heat and the fossil fuel industry or climate change is not necessarily linked. And in Norway, it's definitely not. And though it's really fun with making memes, this is really sad to hear. And I think, I hope that the media can actually also be a little bit self-critical about that and train their journalists to report better, because we need that information, right? Callum, are there any signs of anything positive coming out in the Norwegian media, or is it just like the best beach and hooray, today the sun is shining again? And
I mean, I do think it's quite shocking, to be perfectly honest. And I think we all should, reflect over, especially this summer, like when you see so many hundreds of thousands of people getting evacuated from their homes. In Scotland, there was just close to where my parents live, there was multiple different towns that got fully evacuated because of wildfires. And I've never heard of that before. It's totally crazy. And I do think that it does something to the population when you see stories about, you know, the climate changing with some kids jumping into the sea or eating an ice cream as the picture. You know, I think personally, the media in Norway and across the world, but I know the Norwegian situation. I think they are failing us on a massive, massive scale, and I think we should really reflect over that, because it's also our job to challenge that and confront it. But I really do think that the media is failing us. Yeah. But there has been some positive examples. There was and I think this
one article.
Yeah, I mean, in Bergens Tidende this summer, there was a journalist, a summer intern, who decided to look a bit into the Equinor sponsorship of this new ocean exhibition at the Vilvita Center, the science center there.
They sponsor all the science centers in Norway.
Except one.
All except one.
Because one person decided to say no to it, which I think people should also reflect over. That it doesn't take too many people to challenge this. Yeah, but this article in Bergen really challenged the sponsorship of the Science Centre by Equinor. And for me, it was such a good example of what climate journalism in Norway could be, and the stories that we're telling or being told could be. That, you know, we're seeing this like massive changes all around the world, massive impacts, but then this journalist is going and actually challenging an institution who is making concrete decisions to platform a company that is selling fossil fuels. They're challenging Equinor also on the fact that they have cut their renewables targets, which almost no media wrote about, which is absolutely crazy, I think, when we see a summer like this. NRK, I haven't seen them ask a single question to Anders Oppedal that Equinor, who have been telling us since 2018, when they changed their name from Statoil to Equinor, that they're you know, a company leading the energy transition, blah, blah, blah. They've cut their renewables investments, and no one is fucking talking about it.
Luckily, this war in Ukraine happened, So we can talk about energy security.
Yeah, energy security. But this is all is strategic communications. That is what we have to understand. That in 2018, it was really good for Equinor's position to talk about the transition, the energy trilemma. In 2022, they changed it to energy security. And now it's reliable energy. This is Equinor's slogan now is providing reliable energy for
a
world in transition. You know, this is strategic communications. And we need to challenge it because this is the stories we're being told, and society is not going to do anything about the climate. I've got the Equinor logo too. We're not going to do anything unless we start to understand the power structures that are lying behind this stuff. Because I think that's the thing for me. I watched this Kevin Anderson interview on Novara Media, and he's talking about how we, haven't understood the problem and we haven't acted in time. I'm like, no, it's not we. Like we the public have been told a story. We've been fed basically lies, by the fossil industry, and that is the problem. And we're still being told the same stories, and they're sponsoring everything and getting to tell their story. Us as individuals, it's so hard to challenge a company that has millions. Equinor in 5 years, they spent 800 million on sponsorships. Like, I work for a climate organization. Last year, we raised 800,000 kroner in donations. Good fucking luck to challenge Equinor when they can spend 800 million on sponsorships.
But then, this is uncomfortable. So Equinor as a company, they affect us all, but also our politicians, right? So because that's, it's up to us, but it's us in the big us, right? As a society. Although we'll dig a little bit into like the agency we all have, and you mentioned that with the journalist or the one leader of a science center saying that this is not okay. It can be the one soccer coach saying that I don't want that on. Yeah. But I would like us for 5 minutes to open up for some questions from you guys, and then we'll end with hopeful. We'll put off the fire and start. Yeah. No, we don't have, but a little bit of hope, or at least a silver lining, right? Yes, please, and introduce yourself and speak up loud. Okay, what are you all doing here? Leave us alone! Yeah.
Feel free to argue against me, but I think the strategic communications issue is one, but I wonder if also there are two other factors. One is that Equinor is owned by the Norwegian state, so we all everyone feels like there's some ownership of this company, and it's delivering enormous amounts of money that pay for people's schools and for hospitals and basic public services, right? And with that then comes this issue of dependency. Norway is dependent on oil and gas income for its economy and for its society. So it's this sort of addiction complex, which I think which creates this cognitive, or at least drives a lot of that cognitive dissonance. It sort of incentivizes people not to actually think about the climate issue too much, and that's part of the problem. Would you agree with that?
In one of the episodes of the podcast, we go through some of the top myths associated with oil and the money, and we were poor before and we'll be poor after, and oil is essential to daily life and therefore must always be. And we go through each one of them and analyze them and challenge them. And I would say that a complex is the right way of thinking about that. I think it is a complex because it's shown time and time again, and many of the guests in my podcast, experts across many fields, point out how those narratives are fallacies. How, for example, we aren't even spending oil money anymore, right? We're spending what we gained from the investment.
Money.
And actually that money is growing faster than anything we're putting in it. So the work's done, guys. We made it. We completed capitalism. Now we can do something else. So I would call it a complex, certainly.
Great question, though. Okay. Oh, that's perfect. Start with the further back there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. A really interesting discussion. I feel like if we just step for a moment in the political sphere, and we've been solely focused on Norway and the impacts of Norway, how do we look from the political sphere in terms of handing over potential power or global power and decision making to Middle East and other oil producing countries? Maybe this is also covered in the myth-busting episode of your podcast.
No, it's not actually. We don't talk about. I don't believe so.
It's potentially another myth, and potentially it holds some truth. But yeah.
I think this is one of the ways that Norwegians sort of defend the position of Norwegian
That
society.
our oil is better than the other oil.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Well, we definitely talk about that, and we definitely myth bust that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Callum, you want to talk?
I mean, for me, I think the last few months since March have been an incredibly good example for why we should get off fossil fuels as fast as we possibly can. Because when Trump can just suddenly close the Strait of Hormuz and shut oil supply, I mean, I really think that people, and that's just another story that we've been told, you know, this stable, what is it?
Reliable.
Stable, reliable energy. It's not. Like, it's very unreliable because it can be suddenly closed off in a second. And I think, of course, in Norway, there is all these arguments about energy security and, you know, Russia, and that we should be supplying, you know, energy, gas to Europe. But Altinget just did this big study recently looking at the lobby influence in the EU from Norwegian companies, and Equinor was putting in, like, I don't know, over 12 million euros a year into lobbying the EU. I can't imagine that they're lobbying the EU for, like, massive investment in solar and massive investment in battery storage, you know, which they could have done after 2022 when it was like the moment to be like, we need to get off fossil fuels. This is like incredibly unreliable and scary to be reliant on this energy source. So, and I think also just in terms of Norway, if Norway, I think it was very interesting to look at the World Cup, you know, there was Norway really presented this image to the world of, like, you know, we have these strong values and fair sport, and, you know, we're just all in this together, and people loved to, like, portray, or what I saw was that people really liked that image of Norway kind of portraying around the world. But as soon as you mentioned climate in Norway, people are like, oh, no way. We can't do anything. We're just like poor, small Norway, China, and the Middle East. They're all, you know, there's nothing that we can do. I really think we need to get a bit that energy from the football that we saw into the climate debate. That, like, we're a country that is incredibly rich. We have all these resources, people that are really smart and working with all these industries. We could be a global leader on climate and transitioning away from fossil fuels. But at the moment, we're just totally trapped because of the stories that we've told ourselves. We need a new story.
Great, Callum, thank you. But we will, yes, Maria, there was one first here. Okay, first from Elvestuen. Is the form? Hi.
Hi, my name is Ola Elvestuen. I've chaired the Committee on Energy and Environment in the Parliament from 13 to 18. I've been Minister of Climate and Environment from 18 to 20. And I think...
the Liberal Party, right?
From the Liberal Party, yeah. So we stopped the development of oil and gas outside Lofoten, Vesterålen and Senja. I set the goal in 2015 for only electric cars by 2025. So you have some successes there. But my question is, and this is has been a struggle in Norway. It's not a strategy. It's a struggle between different parts. That's my point. But my question is, do you see? I think also Norway should be part of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance as at least an associate member. That's a possibility also to show it. But my question is there now developing a difference between oil and gas? So I agree on oil. There's no rational reason to develop new purely oil fields. Like Wisting up north should never be developed. But on gas, it's a little bit different. Especially with, as you mentioned, with the boycott of the Russian attack in Ukraine, you have to stop the use of Russian gas, and now also with the development in the Middle East. And even though, and right now, even I think that we should produce as much gas as we can for Europe, because you need it at the same time as Europe has cut its gas use by 20%. So that has to continue, but you still kind of like use it as much as possible as part of the transition for cutting emissions that we should be part of and they should be part of. How do you see that new development? Is there a difference between oil and gas? Right.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the work that you have done, Olav. Yes. Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, this does come up.
Is gas better than oil?
It does come up in the podcast. We discuss it. Anna Karnsather from the Norwegian Climate Foundation discusses this, and if I remember correctly, she discusses that gas is used as a kind of way to distract from renewable development by saying, but gas is better than coal, right? So we can just switch to this instead, and that rather than leapfrogging directly to making investments in wind or solar or other renewables, it's being used as a delay tactic. If I remember correctly, that's how we discussed it.
Great. We're running out of time. I don't want to I just want to sit here and continue. But I would like to open up a question from Max. Oh, did you? He's also an outsider with an outsider perspective.
Yeah,
That's
I'm not from UK, by the way. But I'm from Chile. You know, I was driving yesterday to come here, and it really reminds me of the south of Chile, the Patagonia. And we have many similar things, actually. And I love this gathering. I'm really impressed with the whole festival of ideas. But we also share some of the things that are not as comfortable too. Salmon farming is one of them. And now, with this beauty and this incredible achievements of Norway, you know, quality of life, health system, which have been showing to all of us that it's possible, it also comes with a cost now that is taken to other places. Antarctica. I want to take you to Antarctica.
But take us fast, Max.
Yes, sorry. I'm going to go fast.
Fly us there.
Norway is now fishing 70% of the quota of krill in Antarctica. You know that. And it's been extremely difficult to progress on conservation of Antarctica. Just imagine in terms of carbon, how much it is the footprint of Norway on taking there to bring it here, to feed salmon, to then go around the world. Just leave you with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Max. And we'll talk more about that. I know that you had your hand up. Can you be extremely quick and then?
Just representative from Norway. And I just want to mention that, like, what do you think about this? With we know that there's like. Basically not a lot of more oil and gas in the northern area anyway, and we know that like the production will decrease a lot. So, but I also noticed like in Norway, a lot of people can't imagine a society not depending on oil or like even in that. So, like how can we make Norway imagine a society without oil?
Great, and that was a beautiful bridge into the last question or the last point from both of you, because there are always some hope. And my favorite person, Joanna Macy, recently deceased philosopher, eco-philosopher, she talks about active hope, which linking hope to agency. So we need to feel that there is a chance for us to do something. And is there? Are we totally fucked? Equinor has the budget, and we are just who we are, and we depend on them. Or what can we do? And what gives you hope? And then both of you say.
Well, like I said, the Black Thread, available wherever you get your podcasts, does have a full
Highly
episode.
recommended. Yeah.
Full episode looking at steps forward, how to break free of the influence of fossil fuels, not just Equinor, but more broadly. And within that episode, I talked to a lot of very inspiring people about a lot of inspiring stories. For example, Solveig in Ås at the Science Museum decided to drop fossil fuel sponsors because she saw that it didn't fit with the values of the museum, that this was to inspire the youth for their future. Therefore, she made a decision, and she found alternative sponsorship instead. I think that's often, maybe coming back to that complex we talked about earlier, the idea that like, oh God, well if I don't get the oil funding, I won't get any funding. But that's not true, and we see time and time again that people do find alternatives for funding projects or activities or other things too. We heard the story about the journalist doing a good job. That should be happening a lot more. Journalism is supposed to give the people the tools they need to make good decisions. How can you hold power to account if you don't know what the truth is about how your big national product is affecting the climate? How can you choose which parties or policies to champion if you don't have the facts? These are the things that we can change and are changing through actions like the one we talked about with that journalist. And more around the world, we see things like fossil fuel ad bans, right? We see all kinds of actions that are tightening the space for influence to occur. So that's what makes me hopeful.
Great.
I made a podcast criticizing spaces like this, which is sponsored by Equinor.
Yes. Arendalsuka is sponsored by Equinor.
Because it's so permeating every part of Norwegian society. And so I'm really proud and really grateful that you're having this conversation here in that same forum.
And you'll be hanging around so people can catch up with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned a Canadian skier that did something that changed the tobacco. You drew some parallel to. So what gives you hope? What's possible for each and every one of us to do?
I think events like this give me hope, because this conversation, I know, wasn't happening a few years ago. It's a lot more focused now on Equinor and other fossil fuel companies' influence, in undemocratic influence in society. So for me, this very much gives me hope, and I also, thank you very much for putting it on. But the story from Calgary, I think it was 1988. Was the tobacco companies still sponsored the Winter Olympics in 1988? It's so crazy to think about, to me. Like, this is just so far from the reality today. And the reason that it became a story and a conversation in 1988 was because one skier, who's, I think, maybe family member was a doctor or something, had some link to healthcare, he just started talking about it. He did an interview on live TV and started talking about tobacco sponsorship, and I think he said he wasn't going to wear the logo of the tobacco, and that set off a big conversation around the world about tobacco sponsorship in sport.
Great.
And I think for me, I just want to finish on all the big changes that we've seen throughout history, from civil rights movement, end of slavery, suffragette movement, even here in Norway, Alta, Fosen, all of these things have happened because of a few people. It has never been a big group of people in society. It's never been the majority. It's up to a few people to sit down and work hard and actually force through these changes when you're up against such massive entrenched power. And I think people should leave, especially after seeing this summer. You need to leave this room and think deeply about what you are doing in 2026 to challenge these entrenched powers that we're up against. Because it is all of our jobs. It's not the jobs of some climate activist over there. It is the job of all of us. And I think people should seriously reflect over that.
Thank you. That was beautiful last words. Thank you so much, both of you. I can just speak for myself and on behalf of GRID. Welcome back anytime. We would like to continue this discussion with you. Please listen to the podcast. It's really thought-provoking, and it left me feel a little bit shameful, but hopeful in the end, which is a good mix. So thank you so much, Dickon and Colm, and please stay for the Green Mingle that's happening now, right? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Oh.